So we want to take you live to Kyiv now, where BBC News correspondent Joe Inwood is standing by to talk a little bit more about the latest there. Joe, thanks for joining us. So let's start off with the UN Secretary General meeting with President Putin in Moscow today. How has that been received, and what is he hoping to accomplish with this meeting?
I think it's been received with some skepticism that anything can really be achieved. I mean, if you look at the distance between the two sides here, it's for even someone as senior as Antonio Guterres to find some way to get a compromise between them. Well, that's going to be very, very difficult. I should just draw your attention. It's happening right as we're on air. I'm in central Kyiv, and this is a statue that was erected in the 1980s, 1982, to symbolize friendship between Russia and Ukraine. And as you come to us live, they are in the process of taking it down. We're standing under this thing called the Friendship Arch. And this really, if you want to understand the friction, the fracture between these two neighbours, well, this is it. A statue which has stood here for 30 years is now coming down to you live on air.
Yeah, I can see that at least one portion of the statue has been beheaded at this point. If a picture tells, represents 1,000 words, that definitely says a lot. Let me ask you about the other major meeting happening. The Defense Secretary, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, meeting with NATO leaders. What more do we know about that meeting? And especially when we consider that Sergei Lavrov yesterday sort of blamed NATO for prolonging this war, and we have a defense secretary that's asking NATO to participate more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been the narrative that we've got from the Kremlin. This is all NATO's fault. Of course, it's seen very, very differently in the US, Europe, and by Ukraine. We've got 40 defense ministers meeting in Ramstein Air Base, the German air base run by the Americans, and they're looking to try and solidify support for the Ukrainians. Not just military support, of course, that hardware, the howitzers, the tanks, the anti-aircraft systems, but also diplomatic support and financial support. Just today, the United Kingdom government said it's removing all tariff for Ukrainian goods, and so we're trying to see across all of the different areas that would help the Ukrainians. We're seeing this support coming, a concerted effort from the Americans and from their European allies as well.
So I alluded to Sergei Lavrov's comments. Can we talk a little bit more about how Russian foreign officials are responding to these meetings?
With fury, with absolute rage. They have, ever since the Americans turned up, they've been pointing to the fact that the Americans are clearly now helping the Ukrainians. They say that the Americans are now fighting a proxy war, essentially that NATO is at war with Russia. Now, this has actually been the narrative that you've had from the Kremlin throughout. They haven't portrayed this as them versus Ukraine. They've set out to their people that Ukraine is a client state, that Ukraine is being funded by the Americans, and so the increased support that we're seeing from NATO and allies, it really fits into the narrative that the Kremlin's been putting forward all this time.
All right, Joe, thank you.